In an era where people display perfection on social media to either gain admiration, get more followers, and sometimes influence their followers, this was not any different for Natalie. Being born in a village, she devalued village life. Natalie believed she deserved more. Her mother being a retired kindergarten teacher, she often wondered why her mother did not pursue more. The world was full of numerous opportunities. All the most successful people she knew online were neither nurses like her sister Maureen, nor her other sister Stella, who was a respected teacher in the village, having taken after her mom's footsteps. After high school, Natalie knew without a doubt that she was meant for the city. Some of the celebrities she followed online were either models, brand influencers, had online business, and could make lots of money by only posting online. Little did she know there was a hidden truth behind the glamour, the first-class plane travels, fleet of cars, or residing in affluent neighborhoods. The online businesses was only a cover-up. Unknown to Natalie, she rejected any efforts by her mother to join higher learning, her argument being she would not like to survive on a small income if there was a possibility to make a larger income. Natalie wanted the high life. She wanted a swimming pool in her compound, a Lamborghini. She wanted fame and admiration, and all this she couldn't get from a mere career in teaching. One morning, Natalie approached her mother with a request to allow her relocate to Nairobi in search for a better life. With a pounding heart and uncertainty of what would happen to her daughter in a far town, she tried to convince her to accept the life they lived in the village and enroll in a nearby college to secure a career in teaching. Natalie could hear none of it. She was determined. Her mind was made up. Nothing was going to stop her journey to success. With a heavy heart, the mother prayed for her, wishing her well. She assured her that she could always come home if life in Nairobi turned unbearable. Natalie wanted to document the whole process to share with her handful fans. Her sisters accompanied her to the bus station. The excitement on Natalie's face was noticeable. She was approaching her dream. Natalie had a plan to be successful. She did not know where to start, but once she got to the city, she was sure things would take shape. At the city, the hustle and bustle was real. Everyone was in a rush to make the most in a day. Natalie could not stand the slowness in the village. She admired the speed in town. With her small savings, she rented a small apartment in the suburbs and bought a few necessities before she could fully come up with a plan what her next step would be. Life in the city was hard. After a few days, her small savings was depleting and soon she would go without food. The rent was due. Life was expensive. Natalie remembered her mother's voice, but again, she was built of thick skin. She was not the type to give up easily. She had to find a way to make money. She was now used to the city life and now had to step out and find work to do to cater for her bills. Natalie walked around looking for a job, but without any higher learning. Securing a quality job deemed impossible, so she accepted a job as a cleaner in a restaurant. Life was hard. She was not used to the pressure, but she kept pressing on. Within no time, she got used to it. Natalie developed a positive attitude, wore a smile when she could, and worked well with everyone. Unknown to her, that the desired exorbitant experience of life was near. One day, a regular customer, Janet, spotted her cleaning in the restaurant. Janet would frequent the hotel. She would hold small conversations on personal matters, and after a short while, the two developed a friendship bond. Janet would invite Natalie to help her clean her mansion, and observing how determined Natalie was, she decided to open up more. Janet was a rich lady. She was living in a posh estate, had a fleet of cars. She would travel first class to a country of her choice whenever she wanted. Natalie had gained her trust. This was a privilege to Natalie. She had finally come close to her dream and had planned to ask Janet to employ her in her business so she could support her more. Janet, on seeing her determination, she hired her as her assistant, allowing Natalie to learn all about Janet. Janet introduced Natalie to nightlife, clubbing and drinking. She taught her to drive and taught her to talk to rich affluent men. Natalie moved out of her small apartment and was now living with Janet. Janet was smart. She was a go-getter. She had joined some illegal business where she would scam rich businessmen, and taking advantage of Natalie's naivety, she wanted to use her as a scapegoat in the event of any negative eventualities. Natalie had found a friend who would help her realize her dreams. Unknown to her that she was being used, Janet promised to improve Natalie's life with every share of the money they would make. They would both get an equal share, only if Natalie used her identity to lure the rich men, gain their trust, and introduce them to the investment, which would be worth millions of dollars. Janet had taught Natalie to use her feminine aura to front her beauty, and had advised her on the places she would source the rich men and how she would check if a man was wealthy. Natalie was determined to escape poverty. She wanted to prove wrong her mother and sisters in the village. Soon enough, Natalie's life started improving. More clients wanted to invest with them. She would readily share her identity without asking questions, while Janet kept her identity concealed. After a short while, Natalie had bought her own house. She would travel first class and had started enjoying the life she only dreamt of. Communication with her family in the village had diminished. Even so, her family kept her in prayer. She now wanted to focus on business. She blocked any voice of warning. Sometimes seated alone in her house, a thought of being caught would flash her mind, but she would quickly rub the door off her mind and focus on the good life she was living. The partying with rich handsome men, though elder, money was at her disposal. She would dress in the leading brands. Her online presence attracted several followers, and despite some being critical, she paid attention only to the admiration she got from the supportive followers. Natalie was now living on top of the world, not knowing that her downfall was close. Being in the business for about 2 years, Natalie and Janet had scammed hundreds of men. Some who they would travel to their countries and use juju to confuse them, so that they would not come back claiming. This worked for a while until it did not. Also, some of the wealthy men they would target were those into black market, therefore the men would not press charges to avoid being questioned the source of their wealth. Due to Natalie's online presence, her feminine inviting curves, and presenting herself as a businesswoman, men would often reach out to learn more on her specialty. She was always keen to analyze and filter the moneyed and the upright who were likely to push for justice or revenge. Until one day she missed on an important detail that would lead her into trouble. A client sent her a direct message, and as usual, with the aim to invest his millions of dollars in her company. As usual, Natalie would use flattery to lure the man. Little did she know the man was aware of the tactic. Mr. Mike, a well-respected and successful businessman who had worked so hard to build his businesses. He knew not to mix business and pleasure and held closely the virtue of honesty, hard work, and loyalty. Natalie had begun transacting alone, and on this particular deal, Janet was not involved. Natalie went on to sign the paperwork using her actual address and her real official name. Days passed. Natalie had underestimated Mr. Mark. He had expected a return to his investment. Although he was patient, he was not going to accept the back and forth, lies, or any form of deception. In his instinct, he has sensed that Natalie was a con artist. When time came to claim for his first returns, Natalie went quiet. The phone calls were unanswered. There was no response on email. Mr. Mark's patience was wearing off. He couldn't allow his hard-earned money to disappear without a trace. After he had tried to reach Natalie through all means without any luck, he knew it was time to contact the authorities. Luckily, he had maintained Natalie's social media account details before Natalie had blocked him. Mr. Mike had all Natalie's information, and it was time for authorities to contact her. Natalie, in her fraudulent lifestyle, she had underestimated Mr. Mike. She was used to getting away with her actions. Sometimes her beauty would speak for her, but this time it was different. Her deceit had caught up with her. Natalie's information was with the authorities. Her bank accounts had been frozen and her travel documents confiscated. Her time to be exposed had come. Natalie was asked to present herself to authorities to prevent an embarrassing scene, but she had none of it. Lacking another alternative, law enforcement officers engulfed Natalie's apartment, and without wasting any chance, Natalie was thrown into a cell. The case was a high profile, it had involved a government official. TV stations and newspapers had taken an interest in the case. Within no time the information reached her mother and sisters in the village. It was time for the mother to stand by her daughter. They all traveled to Nairobi full of uncertainty, hoping against hope that this was not about their kin, but how could they deny it? Natalie's photos were all over the newspapers and TV stations. There was no escape. Stella and Claire stood by their mother giving her hope. Mr. Mike was ready to withdraw the case if Natalie would pay her back. Janet stayed away from the issue. She had flown to a nearby country to avoid being associated with Natalie. In order to avoid jail term, Natalie quickly put all her assets on sale and paid back all she owed Mr. Mark. Luckily the case was withdrawn and not gone back to zero. With nothing to call her own, nothing was under her name, everything she owned was used to pay back Mr. Mike. Natalie was full of regrets. She had now come to believe what her mother had always told her, that life is a process, everything gained unjustly would leave her hand quick. It was time to pick herself up. Luckily, her family was supportive. She finally agreed to go back to university. Natalie's joy to have millions of followers had vanished. All her previous friends were nowhere to be seen. She wanted to settle in the village. Natalie began appreciating the calmness in the village. She had learned her lesson. Natalie enrolled back for her degree course at the university. Through her supportive family, she was able to graduate, secured a teaching job in the village, and used her story to inspire the youths in her community. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like to keep receiving entertaining content from this channel.